I genuinely used to think that after you failed a few times, the next smart move to make was to play it safe. But throughout my career, the more I watch companies and investors take risks, I actually realized something. That playing it safe too soon is actually maybe the biggest risk of all. It's natural for people, especially later in life, to think once you've had your shot, then it's time to settle down. The risk is for the younger, bolder version of yourself. But that mindset often comes with a hidden cost, because the truth is the cost of inaction is much greater than the cost of action. Most people only fear what might go wrong when they try again, but they don't stop to think about what they're losing from not trying. In my 18 years of working in finance, I've learned a few things about risk that I want to share in this video. First of all, why you can't escape risk. Second of all, why it's worth taking risks for the things that make you happy. And then finally, how to keep taking risks, even if you're at a point in life when you need to play it safe. I want to start by saying that, look, most people don't get this, that every decision in your life is irreversible. Not necessarily in outcome, but always in cost. Think about it. Not every decision is permanent, but every decision costs you something. You can change your mind later, but the time, money, resources, energy, opportunities lost, they can never be undone. For example, you can decide not to go to a party, change your mind, and then still show up later. In this case, you've changed the outcome. You weren't going to go to the party, but you change your mind and now you go. But you haven't changed the cost. The hour, 2 hours it took you to change your mind are gone, and they're gone forever and can't be undone. This reminds me of a story because a few years ago, I was living in a Spanish-speaking country for about 2 years, and I didn't learn a single word of Spanish. 2 years, not a word of Spanish. I was surrounded by the language every single day. I just didn't commit to learning it. I stuck with English. I stuck with what was comfortable, and I just never made any progress. Looking back, I always told myself, oh, I'll do it later. And look, eventually I did. A couple of years later, I actually moved to a different city, no fallback. I went there on my own, completely immersed myself with people who didn't speak a word of English. Within about 7 months, I could speak Spanish quite confidently. So yeah, I reversed the outcome. I couldn't speak Spanish and now I could, but I couldn't reverse the cost, right? The 2 years I'd lost, they were gone. I couldn't go back and have conversations I didn't have. I couldn't go back and build friendships I didn't build. I couldn't go back and connect with a culture I didn't connect with. I reversed the outcome, but I didn't reverse the cost. We all face decisions like this on a daily basis. Every decision we make carries a cost. It carries risk. There is no escaping it. In economics, this is called opportunity cost. It's basically the value of the next best alternative. So the cost of doing A is that you can't do B. The cost of going here is that you can't go there. These opportunity costs are invisible. They're hard to see, they're hard to plan for, but the whole science of economics is built on them because it's built on the idea of trade-offs. When you take one option, you just can't have the other option, especially when you have limited resources. Some might be more financial, some might be more psychological, but whatever they are, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't make them any less real, and it definitely doesn't make them any less painful. Now, the simple logic here is that if you're going to incur risk in everything you do, then you can incur risk chasing something you don't want just as easily as you incur risk in chasing something you do. Think about someone who chooses a safe option, a safe job, let's say an accountant, but they really wanted to be a writer. So on the face of it, it looks like the safe option, but maybe 10 years later, they're unfulfilled, they're burnt out, they're doing a job they don't want to do, they're spending all their day in a place they don't want to be. Maybe they've even been laid off from that job, even though they didn't even want it in the first place. There's still risk. They took a risk on the life they didn't want, but it didn't protect them from failure. So if you're going to face risk anyway, why not aim for something that actually matters to you? Have you heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Well, it's a cornerstone of economics, but basically it's a map for what humans need in order to live a full and meaningful life. So it starts at survival and ends with purpose. It's often shown as a pyramid with sort of 5 layers. So at the bottom layer, you have basic survival. So like food, water, shelter, things like that. Then on the second level, you have belonging, friendships, that kind of thing. And then on the third level, you have self-esteem and self-respect and that kind of thing. And then at the top level, you have self-actualization, which is basically the level where you become the most complete version of yourself. It's where you're not just surviving, it's where you're creating, growing, giving back, doing a job or living a life that really matters to you. And here's the key with this. Most people think they're chasing success, but in reality, they're chasing self-actualization. They want to feel like they've reached their full potential, like they've become the person they were capable of becoming. And Maslow says that people only live or start living fulfilled lives when they start living at this top level. Just like in the past when people struggled to survive, these days people struggle to self-actualize because it involves a lot of the same traits. You need to take risks, you need to be brave, and you need to keep chasing it. When you settle, you still face risks, right? The risk of regret, the risk of burnout, the risk of insecurity. But the good news here is that whatever your situation in life, you don't have to avoid taking risks. You can learn how to manage it. As a financial consultant, I've followed investor behavior for maybe 2 decades. right? And I can tell you what separates a poor investor from a successful investor. And basically the difference is that a successful investor manages risks successfully. It really is as simple as that. Here's a framework that you can take from the investing world that you can apply to anything in life that helps you become the person you feel you're capable of being. It's called asymmetric decision making, and there's just a couple of things to understand. First of all, each decision or action needs to be asymmetric in nature. It needs to have limited downside and unlimited transformative upside. Basically, very low risk and a high payoff. The reason for this is because, secondly, asymmetric decision making is nonlinear. This basically just means that most of the decisions and the actions you take won't work out, but that's okay because you only need one to work out for it to make a transformative difference in your life. So here's how to start. It's very simple. Basically, look for any idea, strategy, person, skill, system, anything at all that has a small input, but when it works out, will change your life. So for example, spend 1 hour a week looking for a job, even if you don't need one. Different employers pay differently for the same job. So the low point here is the downside is that you spend 1 hour less watching YouTube a week. But the upside is you get a new job that pays a lot more money and it transforms your finances. Or another example is once a day send a DM or an email to someone who's in your career but just, slightly ahead of you. Pay them a compliment, ask for some mentorship or advice. Again, the downside is what? You lose a couple of minutes of sending the email, maybe a little bit of embarrassment if they don't reply, but the upside is they do reach out and they give you some advice that accelerates your career much faster. When you sit down and think about it and look at life this way, you'll see that there is an endless number of asymmetric bets you can take in life, no matter what current situation you're in. Each bet won't work out, but you only need one to work. You don't have to avoid risk, you can manage it. So the framework is quite easy. You just look for low-cost experiments, risks that don't break you. You look for disproportionate outcomes. So when you have a success, it's transformative, and you play a non-linear game, which basically just means you accept that most won't work, but you just need one to do. So look, when you're tempted to play it safe, especially after disappointment, try to remember this. The greatest risk isn't failing again, it's never trying again. If you're still breathing, you still got another shot, take one more. You owe it to yourself.